this is going to be an introduction to my little truck here and the Corvette outside, and just exactly what I'm doing with both of them. This truck here is a 1989 S10. It is a 2.5 4-cylinder under the hood, which there's a little bit of something going on there. And yes, it's mismatched multiple different colors. That's because the cab on it originally had holes you could stuff your whole foot through in the floor. This cab, well, rockers are solid, just some peel and paint. And the floor inside, well, it's actually pretty mint. It's repainted black just to get rid of some of the surface rust on there, but overall it's not that bad. Now, what is going on under the hood, you might ask? Well, let's pop that open. Underneath here, this is a 2.5 Iron Duke 4-cylinder with a little turbo on it. Oh, some custom hack job that I made from the junkyard. The turbo on here is a TDO4 something, I forget the exact specs of it. It's about a 40 mil turbo, and that came off of a Volvo S60. It is internally wastegated and internally blown off, which is why I bought it, because I didn't have to buy a bunch of other junk to make it all work. All of the boost tubes and the intercooler, I think in various different spots it says, yeah, Volvo. This one says it right here. You can make that out. Volvo. Right here, another Volvo. So I tried to use as much pieces from the same car as I could on the build. The manifold, I don't know if you can see that in there. The manifold in there is just some custom fab piece of about 1/8 wall tubing. I've had to rebuild it about 5 times now because it keeps getting too hot and breaking. As you can see right down in there, it's actually starting to crack again on me, so it's about time I redo it. But that's okay because I'm putting a new engine in it anyways. This tiny little engine is fueled by a TBI 350 throttle body, and this giant chunk of aluminum in there is an adapter I hand machined out of a, what is that, 1.5 inch thick block of aluminum to adapt to the 2.5 intake and the 350 throttle body. Obviously the exhaust is going straight out of the hood with a modified tractor flap, and intake air is received through what I like to call the super scoop. Just some ghetto fab cut in straight into the hood. All of this monstrosity, believe it or not, is actually tuned off of the factory computer. My dad figured out how to read and rewrite prompts, so we've self-tuned it ourselves. And this little truck, I have it written in the middle of my dash here. June 12th, 2020, it ran a 14.89 at 93 miles an hour. That was on 18 pounds of boost, and I don't have any drag racing skill on a standard, so I think that's pretty damn good. If you haven't noticed, the dash is not exactly original. This is made out of the original tailgate that I took off of the truck. It was in quite a state of disrepair, so I chopped the skin off it, hand bent it to shape over a 2x4, and now I've got this pretty fancy custom dash. Shifter's a rolling rock beer tap with a it's a BorgWarner T5 5-speed. Came factory behind the 2.5 originally. The tailgate handle here is functional. That's for the vents. I don't know if you can see that under there. And this one here does heat. Obviously, blower switch there, radio and lights mounted to it because I don't have a gauge cluster anymore. And I run this little 14-in-1 kit from justraceparts.com.au. They're a great little company. They sell these for a really good price. Truck does have some funny little quirks to it. Being an 89, it has manual brakes, which is really, really weird to find that late, I guess, into the production of vehicles. The wheels on it, they currently don't have center caps, but they're off of about a 2000 to 2003 ZQ8 option 2nd gen S10. And I did a little red pinstripe around the rim. It's ruined on the front wheels because of the brake dust. So yeah, I did the red pinstripe to match the cab, and it actually doesn't look that bad if you have. It does have another stamped Chevrolet tailgate on the back. And for a lot of S10 guys, it's got a blazer bumper on it, tucked up nice and tight, just to give it that extra little bit of coolness. Got these vintage S10 mud flaps, factory fender flares. It's not the coolest looking truck in the universe, but I mean, for what it is, it's not bad. And for what I'm going to do to it, well, let me just get into that. The other half of this abomination product is my 1991 C4 Corvette, which I bought for parts, specifically for parts. I am tearing it apart. Mainly because in 1991, the 6-speed C4s specifically came with a Dana 44 rear end. The Dana 44 is a step up from the factory Dana 36 that the Corvettes all had, meaning I think the 36 had a 7.5 inch-ish ring gear, whereas the Dana 44 has an 8.5 inch ring gear. Bigger axles, the size of the half shafts on this thing are huge. And of course, as I mentioned, the door's locked. And of course, as I mentioned, it is a 6-speed car. The advantage of having the 6-speed means that the rear end is 345 gears. Most of the Dana 36s were like 327s or like 280 something. So I think first gear in the 6-speed is like a 2.5 something to 1 gear ratio, and then the rear end is a 345 to 1, which gives you a really good overall gear ratio. The transmission in it is a ZF6 6-speed. You have 6 forward gears, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And of course, pull ring up, over, and back is reverse. So I'm going to be stealing this 6-speed, the Dana 44 independent rear end suspension, and I'm going to be using it with this boat motor. This is about a 79 vintage Mercruiser 140 boat, and the 79 vintage block is cool because it's got a small block bell housing, meaning you can use small block Chevy clutch parts, flywheel, starter, all the same parts. And I believe, I may be wrong on this, I believe the bore is the exact same size as a small block Chev, so you can use 350 pistons in it if you need to. The car itself is actually pretty cool. It's a 91 C4, tan leather interior, that nice GM leather. Of course, it's all torn up like most of the 90s GM stuff is. The engine in it is a 350 twin port fuel injection rated at about 245 horse and 350-ish torque. Being a Corvette engine, these things came factory with aluminum heads, these little shorty exhaust pipes. In the later years of the tune ports, you got a MAP sensor versus a mass airflow, so it makes taking this engine out and swapping it into something else even easier. They also got these fancy little computers that were in the engine bay versus the car. These are all waterproof, so if you want to swap it into something else, it makes it really cool. C4s are also unique for their front suspension. They're teeny-weeny aluminum front suspension, which I might steal and try to use in my S10 as well. The car is actually in pretty good condition considering, which is kind of sad to a lot of people why I'm tearing it apart, but I was never really a big fan of C4, so it doesn't make me too heartbroken to tear into it. What I'm going to be doing first thing is getting this stupid thing up in the air as high as I can safely, pulling the rear end out of it, pulling the trans out of it, and then eventually the engine, and then just stuffing it out the door, getting the truck in here, and we're going to start tearing things apart. So stay tuned for that. It's going to be fun.